Welcome to Fox Soul's Black Report, your daily source of Black news, views, and opinions. Today is Wednesday, March 30th. I'm Mimi Brown.
I'm Romeo.
I'm Demi Lobo. And on today's report, after multiple failed attempts across 12 decades, lynching is now a federal crime, a federal hate crime. President Biden signed the historical bill into law. Meanwhile, GOP Senator Susan Collins says she will vote for Ketanji Brown Jackson to join the U.S. Supreme Court. So far, she is the only Republican to make that announcement. Then, who should get reparations? That's a question a California task force is asking as the group tries to decide if it should be limited to all Black people in the U.S. or just descendants of slaves.
Plus, a new study says the Great Recession of the last decade was extremely hard on the Black community. Where do we stand now, and what can we do and what can be done to fix it? And two words, on site. Tony Rock is speaking out about the incident between Will Smith and his brother Chris Rock at the Oscars. Halfway through the work week, it's Wednesday. We have all that and so much more with our voice and our truth. So let's get it.
After 200 tries, the nation now has a federal lynching law. President Biden signing the Emmett Till anti-lynching bill into law on Tuesday. Tuskegee University, which tracks the historical history of lynchings, estimates that more than 4,700 people were lynched from 1882 to 1968. Lynchings were very common in the racially charged South. The bill is named after 14-year-old Emmett Till. He was brutally murdered while visiting family in Mississippi by a group of white men. Members of the Till family stood alongside Mr. Biden as he signed the bill yesterday.
The law is not just about the past, it's about the present and our future as well. From the bullets in the back of Ahmaud Arbery to countless other acts of violence, countless victims known and unknown. The same racial hatred that drove the mob to hang a noose brought that mob carrying torches out of the fields of Charlottesville.
The law now makes lynching a federal hate crime that is punishable up to 30 years in prison. The bill took more than 100 years to pass. Wow, 100 years. This is so long overdue. I know that Congressman Bobby Rush, he's been working on this for decades, right? And it's just about time. You know, lynchings were used to terrify the Black community. They were used to send a message that, you know, this could be you, this could be your family, you know. So for centuries, we have lived in fear. And for it to take this long, over 200 tries, I mean, it's bittersweet. I'm glad that we did it, but it's so long overdue.
You know, it is long overdue, Mimi, but the sad part is that even though the physical action of being lynched is gone for the most part in America, we still, as a Black community, still live in fear on a daily basis for so many different reasons. And I also want to commend Representative Bobby Rush because the look on his face when he posed on Twitter, if you get a chance to go to his Twitter account, he posed with it in his hands, and you could tell the smile was literally ear to ear because he spent a very long time trying to make sure that this went all the way through. And also, I'm sure that there has to be an overjoyed feeling knowing that Emmett Till was 14 years old when he passed away. His mom has to feel a certain level of overcoming right now because she also has been working for a very long time to get this recognized.
Leaving that casket open for the world to see what happened to her son. What parent had enough courage and strength to do that, knowing that you don't have your son anymore? This was long overdue. We are glad that it happened. And what I'm going to tell you right now, with my grandparents, there was always an issue. The N-word and the word lynching was always a threat to the Black community. And, you know, it will continue to be. But now with this law, hopefully, we can cut back on some of those numbers.
Absolutely. So Senator Susan Collins, she says that she will vote for Ketanji Brown Jackson to join the U.S. Supreme Court. The two women met yesterday, and it was the second time that Jackson had a conversation with the senator from Maine. Beautiful smiles on their faces right there. So Collins is the first Republican to agree to vote for Judge Jackson. Her yes vote means Vice President Kamala Harris most likely won't be needed to break that 50-50 tie on the confirmation vote. Every Democrat has agreed to vote to confirm Judge Jackson.
Some of the best news I heard this morning right there. A debate is growing over Justice Clarence Thomas's judicial ethics on the bench. Democrats are calling for Thomas to recuse himself from any Supreme Court cases that are tied to the January 6 riots. This comes after revelations his wife, Jeannie, was trying to help President Trump overturn the 2020 election. The issue is expected to be used by Democrats during the fall's midterm elections. Some Democrats, like New York Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, are calling for Thomas to resign or be impeached.
And the January 6th committee, they're investigating if President Trump was using, in fact, a burner phone on the day of the insurrection. Now, the panel is trying to figure out if it has the full record of his communications or if he was using his aides' phones or even a disposable phone. The House committee says phone records show that Trump did not use his phone for 7 hours on that day. Now, John Bolton, the former president's national security advisor, he says he and Trump talked about using burner phones to avoid having phone calls scrutinized.
President Biden is keeping his promise to support reproductive health in his new budget. For a second year in a row, the president took out the Hyde Amendment from his budget proposal. The Hyde Amendment denies insurance coverage for abortions to people who receive it. Now, their health coverage is through government-sponsored plans like Medicare. The amendment hurts low-income women and communities of color who struggle to pay for abortions. The move comes as a GOP-lead states are working hard to restrict abortion rights for women.
Jobs, housing, and income disparities were just some of the issues Dr. Martin Luther King was trying to fix during his 1968 Poor People's Campaign. He spent the last few years of his life fighting for basic rights for the forgotten in America. 54 years later, the fight continues, this time with Reverend William Barber and Reverend Dr. Alvin O'Neill Jackson.
Barber and Jackson, along with thousands of other activists, are in the middle of a multi-state mobilization tour. They're trying to bring attention to the issues that are affecting millions of Americans. Now, it culminates in a mass Poor People's Low-Wage Workers Assembly and March in Washington, D.C. on June 18th. Now, here to talk about the campaign is Reverend Dr. Alvin O'Neill Jackson, the co-chair of the Poor People's Campaign. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
Oh, we are so happy to have you here on the show today. Now, first things first, the campaign has already hit some U.S. cities. What have you learned on the campaign and also what is the final goal?
Well, the final goal, we're on our way to Washington, D.C., June 18th, and where we expect hundreds, tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of people to fill the streets of Washington, D.C., to call attention to the 5 big interlocking injustices of systemic racism, systemic poverty, ecological devastation, the war-based economy, and the false moral narrative of religious nationalism. So it will be a big day, June 18. We'll conclude that tour in Washington, D.C. on the 18th of June.
On the 18th of June. Mimi here, thank you for joining us. You know, Democratic politicians, they often talk about the middle class when talking about helping regular Americans, and we rarely hear them, though, talk about the poor. Why is that?
Well, the poor, it seems to be a bad word, but 140 million poor and low-wealth people in this country, almost half the country. 43.5% of this country's population is poor, living beneath the poverty level. And, you know, sometimes people working 2 and 3 jobs, but still not able to make ends meet. And so this is a march to Washington to call attention to that. And we're saying a march on Washington and to the polls, because we're going to be voting in record numbers in the midterm election. So it's about June 18th, but it's also about the midterm elections as well.
So we were talking about the march, and you also just said that so many people are living below the poverty line. So what are the goals of the Poor People's Campaign with those numbers?
The goal is to number one, call attention to that fact. I mean, I think many people really don't know that there are that many people living beneath below the poverty level, and to build from the bottom up. We have presented a moral budget that we presented it. Several of our congresspersons joined us. I'm presenting a budget in the House of Representatives, showing how, if we prioritize some of our priorities, there's enough for everybody. Scarcity is a lie in this country. there is abundance. But we spend 53% of every dollar on the military, and to prioritize some of that for health care and for paid family leave and the other things people need to live. One of the things that we've found that the pandemic didn't discriminate, but the government and society has discriminated because poor communities were impacted 5 times more than wealthier counties. So we've got some serious inequities here, and that is what June 18th is about, calling attention to those inequities and showing how we can build from the bottom up.
That's right, build from the bottom up. You know, your message is so in line with, a social justice ministry. And oftentimes in Black churches, we hear, we talk a lot about prosperity and prosperity gospel. But why do you think more churches aren't talking civil rights like they were in the 50s and the 60s?
Well, we've got to keep just kind of reminding folks that we've got work to do. We've kind of put a myth there that a lot of folks were doing civil rights in the 50s and 60s. The numbers were actually rather small then. Dr. King was probably the most unpopular when he was assassinated in Memphis in 1968. So it's always been work to call this to the attention of the larger society, and so we've just got to keep working at it. But we organized in 40 states around the country, and so we're finding that there are many people who are getting the message and joining us as we call attention to these inequities and injustices.
I like that you are honest about Dr. King being the most unpopular, but you've still been following closely in the steps of Reverend King, and you fought for voting rights in North Carolina. You are also talking about those of us that need help the most. What encourages you to do this kind of work?
Well, the people, the poor and low-wage working people who are out there fighting every day, working several jobs, trying to make ends meet. That is what encourages me and what encourages all of us to keep working at this. And it's across racial lines. It's Black, it's white, it's Asian, it's immigrant. All kinds of people from all over the country joining together. That's what keeps us all in this work together, young, old, so all kinds of folks joining. And it's always been a moral fusion movement like that really makes the difference. And so we're going to be calling attention to that on June 18th. And we're saying that June 18th is not just about the day, but it's about a declaration of an ongoing moral committed movement that builds power, changes the political narrative, and fully addresses poverty and low wealth from the bottom up. That's what this work is about.
We will be following the Poor People's Campaign very closely to see what you guys' next moves are. Thank you so much for joining us, Reverend Dr. Alvin O'Neill Jackson, and we definitely hope to have you back soon.
Absolutely.
Thank you for having me.
Should reparations be limited to certain Black people? Well, that's the question a panel of Californians are asking in the First Nations Task Force dealing with the idea of reparations. Some members of the group want to limit financial compensation for descendants of enslaved Africans. Other people say it should go to all Black people in the U.S. regardless of the lineage. They say all people of African descent in America have suffered from discrimination. Governor Gavin Newsom signed a legislation creating the 2-year reparations task force, but some Californians disagree with the entire idea. They say California was not a slave state. They object to residents having to pay for something that did not happen in the state's history.
And the Democratic Party is moving closer to remaking its 2024 presidential nominating process. The draft proposal to end the party's current structure, where the Iowa caucus goes first, followed by the New Hampshire primary, could go to a vote in April. Proponents of the change say a party that is 40% non-white should have a nominating process that starts with states that are more racially and ethnically diverse. If the proposal gets the majority support, Iowa's first in the nation status would be in trouble.
The California legislature is now pushing a bill to keep the addresses of poll workers hidden from public records. Election workers would be offered the same protection as domestic violence victims or people who work in abortion clinics and their patients. Now, supporters say the drastic measures are being taken in the aftermath of the 2020 presidential election and the deadly Capitol riot. A national survey of 600 election officials finds that 1 in 6 have experienced threats because of their job.
To vote while they're on probation is unconstitutional. A panel of North Carolina state judge ruled this week that the law discriminates against black residents. The decision could affect tens of thousands of previously convicted of felonies. It could also change the future of local, state, and federal elections. The decision expands on a preliminary injunction issued last summer by the majority of the panel.
A Florida judge is dismissing the request by a woman who was taken at birth. She asked the court to grant an early release to her kidnapper, who she also considers her mother. In a court filing, the judge says a request to shorten the sentence of Gloria Williams was not filed in a timely manner. 23-year-old Kamaya Mobley wrote the letter to the judge asking for Williams' sentence to be reduced from 18 years to 9. In the letter, Mobley called Williams her mother. Back in 2018, Williams was sentenced to 18 years in prison. Mobley was taken from a hospital when she was just a few hours old. In 2017, Mobley got a DNA test confirming she was the same child as the one taken in 1998. Tips from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children led to Mobley being found by her real family. This story is so sad. You can kind of feel it on both sides. Like, I feel for, Kamaya. She's 23 years old now. Right now, she was taken when she was just a few hours old, Demi, and she was raised by a woman who she believed to be her mother, and she didn't find out till she was a teenager, and she wanted to apply for a job, and she needed her social security number, and now, when it hit the fan, her mother was arrested, and she is serving 18 years in prison. She's only 4 years in, by the way. I can't even imagine, how that might feel.
Yeah, I know. Go ahead, Demi.
I just don't. I wonder, are there people who feel bad for the woman who did the kidnapping? I really don't. I'm having a hard time feeling bad for the woman who kidnapped a child, and you made this child believe that you were her mother forever. There's one thing like adopting a child and going through the proper stages of going through, adoption. But this woman didn't do that. You stole a child and made that child think that that was your kid. And so, she's saying, like, I've been getting a master's degree and I've been an upstanding citizen. But, like, the damage is done. This girl has so much trauma. She has to literally rebuild a relationship with her natural born family that I'm having a hard time feeling bad for the woman who did the kidnapping.
Imagine being a parent carrying that child for 9 months and then it being taken away from you. So understand, this lady raised her and everything, and she feels she has that connection with her, but her real parents, what are they saying about this? I think the decision is going to be hard for them, because if I was that side of the family, I'd be saying, no, I don't want you to cut that in half. I want her to do the full 18, because my life was taken from me for over 2 decades, right? I had to wonder, where's my child? Is she alive? All those things ran through their mind. And now that they are reconnected, they can build that. But I don't know. I think the big decision is on her real parents to decide if they want to fight along with her on this or go against it.
Romeo, I would agree with you, but I'm putting myself in the place of the child, right?
Okay.
If I was raised by a woman that I thought was my mother for 18 years, and I find out that she's not my mother, how would I feel? I wouldn't want to see her behind bars no matter what she may have done.
Because it's all you know,
That's
right?
all you know. That's who you think is your mother. And I do feel for the woman. I can't imagine, my son being taken at birth. But what I'm saying is I feel, for the girl, for the child in this situation as well.
She's
conflicted. Yeah.
You're right.